Hi everyone, I'm Saverio from HoRNet Plugins, and today I would like to show you our latest plugin that is called AnalogStage MK2. In fact, it's the second version of our analog console emulation, and exactly we have modeled the input stage and the preamplifier of three different kind of analog consoles. We didn't model any specific console like we did with the previous version, but we focused on the characteristic of three different circuit types that are found in many consoles and many different kind of consoles and from different eras, because nowadays we use in electronics operational amplifier, which are modern components that are very quiet and clean, and these are the components used since the 80s. So everything made from the 80s up to today uses this kind of components. While in the 70s, a lot of times consoles used discrete transistors that were the new thing at the time, and transistors are a solid-state version of tubes. So they are a little bit more noisy, they offer a little bit more distortion, and need usually they need a transformer on the input and the output to be driven correctly. So they have a more saturated sound. Then we also model the tube circuit, which is very often similar to the transistor circuit, but uses a tube as a addictive element that provides the amplification, and it's a device on its own class, and it offers the more distortion among all the models we have, and also as a dynamic kind of distortion, because the level of the previous sample changes the amount of distortion of the sample you are manipulating at the moment. It's a little bit more complicated, but let's say that the tubes has a memory effect. So if the signal is very high for a long period of time and then it drops down in level, saturation keeps on being high even if the level fell down, because it has this kind of memory. So it's a very interesting type of distortion. And this was everything was present already in the first version, but we also added a lot of usability thing and useful other functions. So let's look at the interface and I can explain you what exactly everything does. So up here we have a VU meter that shows you the input level, and of course it shows using volume units. So it's not a peak meter, it's a VU meter. It has an integration times of 300 milliseconds, the same VU meter that you find in our VU meter MK4. So it's a proven piece of code that actually measures the loudness of the signal. And then we have an input knob like we had in the previous version, but at this time we added the output knob and the option to link them together, so that when you increase the level with the input knob, the output knob decreases accordingly, so you keep the same loudness even if you are increasing the saturation. Then we also added a button to increase the gain by 20 dB to completely drive the analog stage. It's like using a microphone input on a line level. So now you can get heavy distortion from this plugin. Then we have our Autogain that was already present in the previous version, and you can of course change the Autogain target between 1, 0, 1, 2 and 3 VU, and of course when you enable it, the plugin starts adjusting the gain to match your desired target. And then we have the saturation mode, and of course, as I told you, we have operational amplifier, transistor and tube. Then we have the age selector like we had in the previous version, With this selector, you actually simulate the aging of the console. So the condensers dry out, the saturation increases because the power amp inside the console is not able to provide the needed amp. So when you increase the aging of the console, you get a thinner sound, you get a more distorted sound. So it's something for you to experiment with. Then we added the phase reversal button, and in this section we added high pass and low pass filters. They are 6 dB octave. This has been requested many times, so we just added them, and it's useful if you want to high pass your signal before your equalizer. Then we have the hiss button. This emulates the analog hiss, and of course if the track is stereo we have a stereo hiss, and if it's mono we have a mono hiss. And then we have the hiss level that was not present in the previous version. By default is negative 100 decibels, but you can of course increase it. You see in the view meters, or in Reaper's view meters down below, that it's increasing, and you can decrease it of course if it's too much, or turn it off altogether. Then we have the saturation button. This button enables or disables the saturation of the plugin. And then we have the headroom knob. With this knob, you reduce the actual power that the console has at disposal. So it saturates earlier or later. By default, the headroom is 18 dB, so that means that the clipping happens with signal that are at plus 80 dB in regard to the zero in the VU. So actually the VU is calibrated to negative 18, so when you hit the plugin with a 0 dB FS signal, you are gonna get the full range of the plugin. And then we have the name of the track, that it's read automatically from the DAW in both VST3 audio unit and AAX, but it's not in VST2 because the standard doesn't support it. You can change it, but since this is read from the DAW, to change it you have to change it in the DAW, and the plugin updates. Then we have the group selector, because this plugin can be grouped in up to 8 different groups. So every change you make to one parameter is copied over to all the other plugins on the same group. And of course you can have up to 8 different groups, and if you want you can rename the group and call it whatever you want. Test group, for example. And also we borrowed all the technology from VU meter MK4, so we added the ability to send every parameter both to group or to a global group, where every parameter is applied to all the instances of the plugin, so you can make faster adjustments. Say you have 3 different groups, for example, and you want to change one parameter for all the instances regardless of the group. With this function, of course, you can. So if I right click on any control, I have the option to choose send to group or send to all. When nothing is selected, the control is clean, no dots appear. When you enable send to group, a yellow dot appears, and when you enable send to all, the dot becomes blue. So you know at first glance which parameters are global and which are group. So by default, these are the linked parameters, and they are all global because it makes sense to want to autogain to everything at once. It makes sense to change the kind of console for all the instances, its age, and its level and saturation. Then if you want, for example, to boost all the instances, you can simply right click on the input and click send to all the instances of the plugin will receive this amount of gain. and I usually don't use that, but if you want to enable or disable link IO, for example, for all the groups, just do this, and it's going to be enabled or disabled for everything, and so on. So these are the main controls of the plugin, and now I'm going to show you the different kind of harmonics generated by the different models, because the audio effect is very subtle, so I'm not sure you're going to hear it on YouTube, but I will add it to a drum bass anyway. But for show you visually the harmonics, I have the help of the JS spectrum analyzer from Reaper, and I have one test tone set, one sine wave set at 1 kHz, negative 18 dBs, so we are hitting our VU meter at 0, and we have chosen to use the operational amplifier, which, as I told you, is the cleanest one. If I increase the Is, for example, you're gonna see more Is at the bottom, but we're gonna look at the harmonics, so let's turn it off altogether so we can see clearly the harmonics generated. And the operational amplifier generates very low harmonics and generates the third, the fifth, the seventh, the ninth, and so on, because it's a symmetric distortion. So we have two transistors in the output set in push-pull. So the first one amplifies the positive sign, the positive half waves, and the second one amplifies the negative half waves. So we don't have the second harmonic, because this is generated when you have a class A amplifier. So this is class AB, so it's cleaner, and it's a more thinner sound, a more clinic sound. It's the classic sound of the SSL console, for example. Then you have the transistor, and here stuff changes, as you can see. We have a lot more harmonics, and we have the second harmonics, and we have a higher level for the other harmonics, because this is a class A amplifier. That means that we only have one amplifying object that has its halfway point set to the linear is part of a transistor. So it's a little bit, I don't know if I have to explain this part of the electronics, but the effect on audio is that it produces odd and even harmonics. And if I increase the input, the level of the harmonics start to rise until it gets crashing. You see, we are starting to get the fourth harmonics, and then when we crosses, we are now at 0 dBFS. Now we are crossing the level, and we got even distortion. And if we keep everything in distortion like we have here with the op-amp model, it gets more cleaner. So we get two different kind of distortion. If we come back to our standard operating point, we see that it's a little bit, we have a little bit more harmonics than your pump, but it's clean anyway. Then we have to use, if you have to use the tube, things changes once again. It's very similar to the transistor one, even though it has a little bit a higher level of harmonics. But when I increase the gain, it starts saturating much earlier. So we are already at just 10 dB of gain, and we see the fourth harmonic here, while in transistor is not present. And of course, if we get more than the 0 dBFS level, we get EV distortion. The three different kind of distortions. And we also, both in the tube and the transistor models, we have a transformer model, which is not visible right now because it only acts on very low frequencies. I can try to use lower frequency test tone to see if the effect is shown, let's say on 100 Hertz. This is the tube, this is the transistor. You see we have the second harmonics, that is the third harmonics that is very high, and the op-amp is much cleaner at lower frequencies, because we have the transformer here that increases the amount of saturation generated. So how does it sound? Almost like this. I want to Autogain all the tracks first. I will turn off the test tone, otherwise you're going to be deaf, and lift back the master. Then I've chosen to have a +3 VU, so I'm hitting it very hard, and I want to have the Autogain enabled with the operational amplifier. So let's let the plugin adjust the gain. So now we have our gain correct. Autogain turned off itself when I turned down when I shut off the playback, and now you can hear the effect of the op-amp. Transistor. Tube. So the effect is light, but it adds up and gives you the idea of an analog desk. So I know I haven't let you hear a lot of the plugin, but I'm not sure that this kind of plugin can be well heard on YouTube. So this is how it works. This is AnalogStage MK2. So we have a demo. You better go on our website www.HoRNetPlugins.com and download the demo and try out for yourself on your songs, so you can judge for yourself if it's good or not. Thank you very much for watching the video.